Going back a little bit, at what point did you started taking writing and poetry serious and pursuing it as a career?
It's a great question. I would say 16 for sure. 16 for
Oh,
sure. At that point, I had been writing for 4 years, which I mean, it isn't tons of time, but it was enough to be consistent about it. It was enough to be serious. And mind you, my perspective, I'm coming from seeing my brothers put out, the Juggaknots album basically around that time. And so for me, it wasn't just, oh, this is a cute idea. It was something that I took serious. It was part of my culture and way of thinking and being, and something I loved and was passionate about. And I saw it firsthand. I was in the studio with my brothers quite a few times when they were working on the project, and they were in big studios at the time because they had a deal with Elektra. So, they were going to spots like D&D, Chung King, Calliope, like major studios. And being exposed at that level, it's hard not to see it and take it seriously, right? In a serious way. So I would say 16 when I wrote the weight joint off of the Indelible, the Lyricist Lounge album with the Indelibles. I think I was about 17 when I did that. So 17, yeah, 17, 18. So, at that point it was professional. It was a legit project. Um, we were performing, getting money for shows and having exposure. And, shortly after that, here a show here a show there. A little bit later after, we traveled too, with it. So it became not just something I was passionate about, but also obviously something that was lucrative, that was a business, in addition to, of course, the culture and the passion of what we loved as artists. So I would say 16, 17, and articles and things like that were being written. And I was like, oh, okay, this is a
So,
real thing.
so you were 16 and doing shows and stuff like that already?
Yeah, 16. Well, the first time I ever performed, I was 13. It was a
Word.
show. Actually, Redman performed. It was crazy. I was really young, but again, that was the introduction. Like, dive in, But
Yeah.
I was ready for it. I've learned so much since then. But yeah, I was pretty young. But 16, 17, between 16 and 18, I would say that was a sweet spot when it started getting serious, and taking it really serious as a performer and a writer, and like creating songs, not just writing verses anymore.
right.
Wait, so I'm sorry, I don't mean to be stuck on this, but at
Right.
between the ages of 13 and 16, you're performing. You just mentioned like Redman. What type of response were you getting from somebody like a Redman seeing the young girl perform? Like, what
Oh
was?
Lord, I don't think it was a response. I
Uh-huh.
don't think it was a response from Red. Shout out to
Or
Red. One
just,
of
but I mean, I'm mentioning Red, but I mean, I'm just saying people in general. What
Yeah,
type
I
of
mean,
feedback
let
were
me
you
be
getting at
let
that
me
time?
be very clear. So 16, between 16 and 18, and again, it's probably more 17, 18. That's when we started kind of doing shows, and I was getting out there a little bit, right, with
Okay,
my brothers and doing that. 13 to that, I was more honing the skills. So if it was
okay,
like a birthday party, like shout out one of my homegirls, Tisha, it was her sweet 16. At the time, I was like 15,
okay,
and I
okay,
spit, but dudes with the response was still like, whoa, like
okay. Right, right, right,
15 rhyming like
right.
that, So I think for me, that was always a thing as far as a positive response, um, especially in a demographic where it's mostly men, dominated at the time. And there's so many other women artists and female artists, which, that's a whole nother conversation, or not really. It's this conversation,
Yeah,
Breeze and I talk about it often. And he's like, you just, to me, yeah, you're my sister, but you one of the illest, period. Take away the gender, this whole
hmm,
conversation of gender and female and artists and all women, and like you're just an amazing MC, period.
right.
Like, and wanting to go in a direction where that should really be what it is. It should be about that and just lyricism. When you think about, poets, and you talk about Nikki Giovanni, and you're talking about, um, Langston, you don't go, oh, Langston, that man.
Right,
Oh,
right,
Nikki,
right,
that
right,
woman poet. They're
right.
just
You just said
poets, right?
poets.
Right. And if there's any sense of labeling, is traditionally, oh, Renaissance, right? Renaissance artists, Renaissance writers, Renaissance poets, right? So
Right.
there's that collective, right? With collective thinkers, creators, artists, not gender, you know. So when it comes to hip hop, there's this isolation in gender, like this or that. Whereas when you think about back then, it was just about the creative, right? So I
Right.
think that's something that needs to be, you know, taken into account as we move forward.